So genealogies, if we're looking at the Bible as covenants, as history of salvation, stages of God's plan unfolding in time in a linear fashion, then you need to connect one step to another. We definitely know the story of Abraham, Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. We know now we need to know the story of Moses. And the story of these people was done very quickly, so that because this is where God is going to make a covenant. And we talked about how he invited Moses from the burning bush. The 5 objections, Moses answered the objections, and then in chapter 6, we have 4 promises. We talked about the promises. I will sanctify you, I will judge Egyptians, I will redeem you, and I will consummate our covenant by bringing you to myself, to the end of promise. So this is why the Jews in their Passover, they drink 4 cups to remember those 4 promises. And they're very, very particular. Sometimes we Christians are not really as meticulous or are as detailed in our service of God as the Jews were. I'm going to tell you, this is where the Muslims take their stuff. The Muslims seem like more serving than us as Christians. And then you go to Egypt, they're very particular about when to pray and how to pray and what should be done in prayer. We're more actually doing it like, okay, whatever. We talked about Passover. Continue. And there's other, we talked about the Passover, actually, yes. We did that. And then we'll go, that's it? Yes. We're going to go to chapter 9. So, when you look at the stuff that happened after they got out of Egypt and then crossed the Red Sea, you have some things happening. Like, for example, God actually does not give them regular food. He gives them special food, very special food. Nobody else had seen, nobody had used. When He wants to give them drink, He's gives them a very special drink. He doesn't give them a regular well. He should, come to this side on the mountain. There's an old well that all the people can drink. No. He actually asked Moses to go up the hill, strike the rock, and the rock would split, and they will drink from it. Why? Why there is a special food that comes with the morning dew, and they find it on the ground, and they have to collect it, and they have to wonder about it. You know the word manna? What does manna mean? What is it? In Hebrew, ma is what? Na is it. What is it? What is it? Because they didn't know it. They have never seen it before. They were not very experienced with it. So, by this way is God actually sanctifying His people. This is practical sanctification. To train them to be holy people. To train a priest. To train a deacon. When you train your child, is how to stand in the altar. What to do, how to behave yourself. How to behave yourself in prayer. That is practical sanctification. Sanctification in your actions. Like you're actually approaching that matter in a very special way. You're not really doing it like anything else. And this is extremely important. Any priest who goes to training, the first and the most important part is this. To make sure that you train the people for holiness. So how will you do that? By giving them a different set of things that doesn't look like anything else. So getting God's people out of Egypt is the beginning of training them to be the holy people of God. They have to be different. The test of obedience and trust shall start in Exodus 15 at Marah. We call it Marah because it's better, like more. Marah, better. And then it says in the book of Exodus, there in Marah, He made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there He tested them and said, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in His sight, give ear to His commandments to keep all His statutes, I'll put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. What's He saying? They brought them to a place. They come to a place. In Marah there was a spring of water, but the spring was very salty and bitter. Bad. So why would God do that? They just came out of Egypt and they're very thirsty. then what would be the test? Tell me about the test. Let's explain that to ourselves. So you bring in your people who had to split the Red Sea, and you're bringing them out of, and you kill the Egyptians and bring them to a bitter water.
Not to think that what happened to you is something you did for yourself, but God did it for you.
Right, and what else? Huh? Yes, they have to trust God. But what would they have a tendency to do? To complain. So you have two choices, either to complain and say like we've been doing all the time. So that test and they fail. Then what God is saying to them, if you are my holy people, I will provide for you. This is even before they go on having the manna and the rock. That's their first test. So that's why it is, if you bring it back to the title, it is, what is the training for? Trust and obedience. Like you do what I tell you, you might find hardships, but what you're going to do, you have to trust me. I tell you to do something, this is the sanctification. I'll tell you to do something, you might understand it. It might actually end up, you're in a very difficult place. I'm going to send you to serve. This is the beginning. What God is interested in doing for the Israelites. Guess what is the end of the story? He's supposed to, what? Send them out in the world to face the whole world to tell them about God. So if I want to train them for that, I'm going to start by very simple tests. I'm going to take you to the better place, and you're going to have to think about it. God had already saved me from Egypt, bringing me to this place, and He's the one who showed me this place. What He's supposed to do? That He would actually turn it into a good water for me. And this is what He did. He told Moses, take this piece of wood from a tree, throw it in the water, water became sweet. The next test of obedience and trust is manna. They were hungry. And Moses cried to God. And then when he cried to God, he said, listen to what Moses said. I was not pregnant of those people. I didn't give birth to them. They're not my kids. And he said, God said, feed them. And Moses said, if I get all the fish of this Red Sea, they just came out of the sea, it will not be enough for them. Then the Lord said, then Moses actually in his memoirs in Deuteronomy, when he's thinking about it, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you again, in order to know what was in your heart. Oh, we talked about this today. When a person is, you want to test them and see how they are resolution about following something, what do? Wait until they are hungry, weak, and then see what will happen. Humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but in every word that comes from the mouth of God. Wait for the Lord to speak. And if He speaks, you'll be all right. The manna is given to Israel on a daily basis. And this is another thing. So the manna is a very complex story. Now, John in the Gospel, the Holy Spirit in the Gospel of John, is using chapter 6 to actually build on this. Because what's happening here? They need to wait for God every morning. And if they trust God, they will completely give up the idea of preparing. I'm going to go every morning and collect the manna. And I'm not going to store any food. God is going to, He promised to give it to me every morning, and I'm going to have to collect it every morning. What we call that? Training for obedience and trust. Right? That's how it is. That's how you become holy. To be obedient to God and trust Him. Always say to yourself, like Abraham, this is the grandfather had it already. When his son asked him, here is the fire, here is the wood, where is the lamb? What did Abraham say?
God will provide.
God will provide. That's the key word. For a person of God, a child of God, always have to go there and be tested and have to have the answer. God shall provide. This is on daily basis, every day. You wake up in the morning and he's in the tent, getting out of the tent, the man, and takes his older son, or maybe two sons, and they're going out, and the wife says, okay, where are you going? She says, we're going to collect the manna. Well, when we slept last night, there was nothing on the ground. The man should say, God shall provide. Right? God gave us specific instructions in collecting the daily bread. These instructions are collecting it daily except Saturday because it already doesn't conflict with the commandment. The highest commandment for them is to rest on the Sabbath. So do it every day except Saturday. This practice had double intention. First, to keep the Sabbath holy. This is a rule that God did not break. Trusting God for every day's provision. Give us today our daily bread. That's what we say in our Father. You fed your people the food of angels. I love this. This is actually from the Book of Wisdom. It's beautiful because it gives you an insight into the manna. You fed your people the food of angels because it comes from heaven. And without their labor, you provided them with ready-made bread from heaven, fitting for every taste or every pleasure, and suitable to every taste for your provision, manifested sweetness toward your people. Beautiful. He's saying the manna actually tasted like wafers with honey. That's what Moses wrote. But they said some people didn't like too much sweet. When they eat it, when they tasted it, it was not sweet. That's what the Book of Wisdom says. When people loved it very sweet, to them it was very sweet. That's what he's saying here. He said, fitting for every pleasure and suitable for every taste. The same thing is said about those who collected little and those who collected much. The one who collected little were not hungry. They got full. And the one who collected much, nothing is. So, the change in the manna that was kept overnight was very dramatic, significant. So, okay, I always say this when we teach the newcomers about the Eucharist. I say, here is Jesus talking. They talk to Jesus, what are you going to give us a sign so that we believe you? They said to him, our father ate the manna in the wilderness. Moses gave us the manna. That was a great miracle. They know it. And he said, your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and died. What happened? What was the manna? The manna is it's like a whole course. So they tasted like wafers with honey. Listen to me. This is what I tell the newcomers. I said, if you put your wafers, say you have wafers, shamadan. If you put it in your cupboard for a year, what would happen to it?
It's not going to taste good.
5 years. But would you expect worms to come out of it?
No.
Why?
It's not meat.
The carbohydrate, it gets moldy. It can get moldy. It doesn't get stinky. If you put shamadan for 10 years, I wouldn't expect it to smell like rotten meat or like eggs. I wouldn't expect worms to come out of it. What would do that? Meat, flesh, right? If you leave fish, it will not bring worms. This is the thing about manna. It's actually very interesting. If you leave it overnight, not for a year, overnight in the desert, in the morning you will find it stinky, smells so bad, like gussa, and it will bring worms. To the degree, it's told in tradition, that the tent who had done this will be smelt in the whole neighborhood. The people will know that somebody had not trusted God. This is the family that did not trust God. They smell awful. You will know them by their smell, by their odor. And they will have worms. What is the sign? What is the sign saying? What's the sign from God saying?
If you don't trust in God, you
More than that. Okay, you know what? There's a saying that you are what you eat. I tell my teenage kids, I said, you're made of pizza. I see you as a bunch of pizza, but put together. Because they love pizza, right? Somebody likes steak, they're a bunch of steak. That's their flesh. Our flesh is what we eat. It goes into us and it becomes who we are. So if I look at this and I see that what I'm eating actually is turning this, what am I? I'm a flesh that will decay and rot and become like rotten manna. So this is a lesson that if we don't trust God, what will happen? If we don't believe Him, if we don't trust God, what happens? We're going to die. We are going to die. And that's the case. When they finished their turning 40 years, what happened? They all died in that's what Jesus is saying. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead because that's their food. their food. That's their food. Not to keep it from to the next day, except on Friday, which is another miracle. So yes, every night it turns into something bad if it stays at home and stinks and brings worms, except Friday. It's like, this is not usual, right? If a food is going to rot, it's going to rot every day. This allowed the Israelites to abstain from working on the Sabbath and was a proof of the divine involvement in their daily life. That God is in their life. He is dealing with them minute by minute. And in the Gospel of St. John chapter 6, the Lord hinted to the manna as a type of the Eucharist. The Eucharist is the true bread from heaven, the food which endures the everlasting life which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal on him. What's Jesus trying to do in chapter 6, if you read it? He's trying to say, the fact that the Eucharist is going to give you eternal life, it depends only on my word. You cannot really explain it, because we could not explain the manna, let alone the Eucharist. The manna does stink and bring worm every time you keep it to the next day, except the Friday, which is very weird. And then there's a third type of manna, we're going to talk about it. But he's talking here about something that will last forever. And in all these cases, what makes that true is his word. If he said, this is it, that's it. So that's the trust. That's training for trust, definitely. And for obedience. The manna was God's special. Yes? Say it again.
You missed this one.
Yeah. The Eucharist is the true bread from heaven, the food which endures. Keep one person's quota in a pot, and this is the third type of manna. Keep one person's quota, what is a food for one person, in a pot in the Ark of the Covenant, and remained unchanged until they entered the promised land forever. Okay, tell me about that. All right. So you have the same manna. It's not different, actually. It's the same exact material. He took it and put it in a pot in the ark with two other objects: the tablets of stone and the rod of Aaron. The rod of Aaron and the tablets of stones and the pot of manna. Okay, this one was never rotted. We don't know where it's gone, because I think by the time of Jeremiah, I think that the ark was taken. But what's that? Why it didn't change? Do you think the one that we keep from Friday to Saturday, if you give it to Sunday, will not change? It will change. But this one, never. Why? That's another thing to think about. Why the pot of manna had manna that never stank nor brought worms? Think about it. It is a sign of the Eucharist, but what was for them, it is definitely a sign of the Eucharist. That's, I think, what Jesus is speaking about. It was kept away from them. They had to have a veil. Nobody can go in there. Nobody can touch it, really. But they can think about it. We have, now, what would that be like in the story of Adam? The tree of life. The tree of life. So they understand. We eat from this manna, everyday manna, which is a miraculous food that we trust God on it, but we die. People die. They go to war and get killed and whatever. But if somebody eats from that one, most probably they will not die, but they're not given. Nobody gave it to them. So why is it not changing? Very simply. What's on top of the Ark of the Covenant? The two cherubim. What's between the two cherubim? God's presence. It's the light. Moses only used to see it. Even the high priest would have to cover it with incense so he doesn't see it. A bluish green light that comes like a pillar like this. And from that bluish green pillar, God used to speak to Moses. And because of that bluish green, we call it the Shekinah or the Sakina. In Arabic, we call it Sakina. Sakina, the Muslim use it as a female name, but it is actually the Jewish name for the divine glory in the time of Moses. So that divine glory kept the pot of manna. What does that? So why it is now think about it in terms of Eucharist. Why the Eucharist is an undying food that brings everlasting life to eat it? Because that body contains the full divinity in Him. Do you understand? So they understand all these things, by the way. When Jesus speaking through the Gospel of St. John, they understand it perfectly. That He speaks about the type of food that nobody can take except who is invited by special invitation by God. So now that's so the manna was God's special food for Israel. It was daily practice in obedience and trust to God. The Eucharist is God's special food for us, though through which we are consecrated as God's special people. This is how it is a consecration for us. Now we only we understand it. Only we trust God. Only we obey when He says, "Come, take, eat my body that I broke. That's broken for you and for many." That's split rock. The second one. So there's food, there's drink. When Israel thirsted, God told Moses to strike a special rock. I hope you saw this. I think I showed you this movie many times. And there is tours now. There's tours in Saudi Arabia. You can go and see it.
They allowed, they opened it?
Yeah, I don't think for a priest with a cross.
Ah, okay.
So this is a valley behind. You can see it on Google Earth. Maybe we should. We have Google Earth.
Yeah.
I'll show you this rock. You see, first of all, the rock has 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm not gonna go. Huh?
What is the name of the movie?
The old movie is called The Mountain of Fire.
Mountain Fire.
A mountain of fire. The search for the true Mount Sinai.
So return of day 7.
Day 7. I want to show you on the Google Maps. That's the rock.
On newcomer.
This is how it is. When you look here, let's look here. It's actually it's eroded, but not just eroded. It's actually shot of it. You know, when you get the rock and then you just keep chiseling pieces of it from the bottom, not from the top.
It's like the waves.
This is a place where it split. It exploded. Rock, this huge rock, boom, exploded into two, and water came and it started splitting pieces of it. And it flew down and it covered the whole area. But the whole area, here it is. The whole area is covered with signs of water coming down. It's known, everybody knows it. I don't think this is something now. I used to, in the past, I used to say it, and I feel like I need to prove the point because I don't doubt it for a second. This is exactly what it is. We're gonna go to Google Earth itself. The Google itself, Google Earth, and we can look at it like from the satellite. It's very you can see it from the satellite. Go to here, Sinai, go to Egypt, turn around, yeah, go turn it this way. That's a lot of power, turning the earth. Okay.
لف شوية يمين شوية شمال شوية.
Yes, I will show you how you can get it. Listen, just up here. No, go back. You see this? You see this little shape like a kidney?
Yeah.
That's the plain where the camp of Moses was. Where they crossed is here. This is where they crossed. And they went down like this, and they came from this area to the mountain. And the mountain is here. Go. You want to see the split rock? It's, Maggie, can you see this? Here.
The green
No,
one.
that's the place. Go up. Up. I want to go to this valley up here. The valley. Yeah, this one. This one. This valley.
Zoom in.
Aywa, go up a little bit. It's here.
تهنا في الصحراء. تهنا في الصحراء. احنا تهنا في الصحراء.
This is it. If there is sun, you would see the shade of it. It's shade cast on the sand. No, it's here in this area. Let's see.
ناخد بنت صغير ولا ناخد بنت صغير.
الكاميرا الأول يعني وصلنا هيعمل من فوق.
هو جوجل ايرث صعب بالكمبيوتر. الموبايل اسهل.
Not looked into it.
الموبايل اسهل بكتير.
That's where the Jabal is. Here. It's here.
نقطة الحمراء.
You see the shadow? That's where this split rock, in the shadow of it, it's very tall. And around it, there's places where the water was actually collected. It was a huge lake. That when Moses split that rock, was not really a trickle. Imagine 2 million people coming out of Egypt and they are thirsty with their animals. Can you have like a faucet with everybody with their poos? Would that work?
خدنا البق.
No, it had to be something huge. This place was covered with water, actually in a 2-mile radius. 2-mile radius, a lake generated in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And it shows something about it actually. There's something about it. When Moses actually struck the rock split and a huge fountain of water came out. As much as there is love in God's heart toward his people. You get that? Like when your son or daughter come to you after playing out in the sun and they say, Mama, I'm thirsty, what do? You rush and you give them a big cold cup of water.
So
This rock was another sign of God's love toward his people. You're thirsty, Habibi? They were actually rushing into the water to swim. Okay? You understand? So, again, what is that? What is that? To keep training them that they should trust him. Even if he leads them into the desert, it is not to get them to kill them. Because every time they turn around and say, Moses, your God is trying to kill us. He called God a murderer. And they started complaining and bitterly. So this is where the water was, and I want to say there's a lot of water erosion if you look at the pictures. I recommend to see that movie. I recommend it big time. It's called Mountain of Fire. The search for the 2 Mount Sinai. But there's tourists now. I want to go to Saudi Arabia at one point. But that's where we are. Listen, what Isaiah said. Oh, that's the song. He split the rocks in the wilderness. One rock, not one rock. Every place they go and they're thirsty, God would do what? Ask Moses to split another rock. It's not like something that he is, I know guys are here, just push it a little bit, it will come out. No. He said, every place you go, I'll send you the water. And then Paul said, and they drank from a spiritual rock that followed them. I used to think, I didn't like it, but Abu Namat al-Miskin used to say, apparently they had found the rock, they put it on a cart, and they're holding it wherever they go. I said, I love Abu Namat, but sometimes he goes into this. It's not really. He calls it one rock, like one goat, one sheep for the Passover. It's one. It speaks about it as a single, but actually it is. But because they represent the one person, that's Christ, it's spoken about as single. You understand? So the rock is actually multiple. In the Psalms, Psalm 78, it says this. He split the rocks in the wilderness. He gave them drink in abundance, like the depth. He also brought streams out of the rock and caused water to run down like rivers. An image that's very profound. They're not talking about a trickle of water or a little seeping place. Right, so let's stop here.